Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at the first submission of the horse Mozart by his owner Louise. And she's only been doing this for about a month with this horse, and I have to say right off the bat, what a great job you are doing here. So, very well done so far. Um, Mozart is a draft type horse of a Norwegian descent, I believe. Yes, he is a North Swedish draft horse. And these horses are very interesting to work with, I find, because you really see what you get. That is, and you've already done a good job, as this one looks quite trim already, as these horses can very easily turn into drafty looking things with big bellies. That, they put on weight very easily, and it's very normal to see them very overweight and with sway backs and these kind of things because they go to that heavy side so quickly. But if you get them fit, as you are doing with this one, he already looks quite good. You're well on your way, and it's amazing how much it transforms them and how athletic these horses can actually look once they are actually fit. So good job here on what you're doing, and for a month along, I think he's doing really well. The stretch is all the way there, a lot of the time anyway. And now we just have to keep working till we get him more active and more consistent in that. You can see here now that he still wants to kind of slow down a bit, and those back legs look a bit like you're pulling, like they're stuck in fly paper at times, but there he goes, and he starts to swing. And of course, notice once again, the deeper he stretches, the more active the hind legs become, and that's always what we're looking for. Very simple concept to understand that all we're really looking for is once we get the head and neck in the right place, the back end will move as well as it can if we keep it active. Always remembering that it's not enough to just put the horse's head and neck down and get it to stretch out. We have to get it to stretch out and then come through from behind, because that stretching only facilitates that happening. And you are getting that to happen here, and once again, for this type of a horse, this is really quite well. They tend to be kind of slow horses, and once again, remember, just like many of the other draft horses, they were often meant to pull very heavy weights very slowly, and they would kind of pull into the collar, so to speak, and that a lot of that kind of strength, and a lot of them would become very ewe-necked. It would be very easy to get them to pull with the shoulders. But if you train them correctly, as we said, once again, they turn into beautiful athletic creatures and really change their entire shape. So it's really great to learn working a horse like this, or any of the other horses that you folks are rehabbing out there and these sort of things, because you really can see, if you're not starting with $1 million horse that just looks like everything no matter what it does, so to speak, until its back starts to drop. But you really see the effect of what we do when you start with some 20-year-old sway-backed horse, or even a young one like this one who hasn't been over his back. So it's a great way to learn, get this understanding on some of these types of horses. And of course, you may never want to go on to another type of horse. Once again, you don't look like a huge person, so this horse looks like it's about the right size for you. And size appropriateness is always so important. We saw way too many people in the past 20 years or 30 years buy bigger and bigger horses that they couldn't ride. So remember that your legs should always come down below the side of the horse. That is where it breaks and starts to go back in again. Because that's really what keeps you on the horse. When your legs are down long and you've learned to wrap around the horse, that goes a long way to keeping you in the saddle. So good job here, and on that walk, I just keep working to get it more and more consistent. And a little more active, and that's perfectly fine what you did there. You broke into the trot for a minute. That's very normal, and after you did, you have a little better walk. So that's what we want to get them to understand is, no, we don't want you to trot, but we want you to walk more actively. Most horses will give you the easier of the two. That is, it's much easier for them to give you a bad trot than a good walk, so to speak. But on the other hand, just like a bad canter, once in a while, even if the canter isn't really great and we have kind of a lethargic kind of horse, just to let him canter for a minute, even if it's a rather disconnected one, it tends to get them a little excited and can kind of spark them up a little bit, but we never want to do too much of that. So this horse is only 6 years old. So I'm not sure if Louise has actually started this horse. She didn't really say whether she was the first person to work this horse or not, or she's just taken it on. But she said she's been doing Art to Ride for about a month. And as I said, that's really good if that's all she's done here. And changing direction, once again, we see the same kind of thing. Just continuing to encourage that longer, more swinging walk is all you'd want to do here. But otherwise, everything is going quite well. And I can see that you have a full cheek bridle on, and that's really kind of good, especially with this kind of horse. What a full cheek does is gives you the opportunity if a horse wants to try to pull out with you. And a lot of these heavier type of breeds are notorious for kind of, pulling you, deciding to go out the gate, so to speak, and deciding to just take their heads and grab hold of the bridle and pull you over there. So it's good to have something on that won't pull through the mouth of the horse in the beginning. Now down the road, once the horse has become supple and relaxed, I highly recommend changing to just a loose ring snaffle, as it's more comfortable in the horse's mouth. But these are very good for starting horses out with. And that's a good walk there, and you see it gets a little stretched. Now sometimes it's interesting like there where, are they just kind of smelling the ground, or are they really swinging through? And when they do that and they kind of get to the bottom and then kind of invert a little bit at the bottom, lifting their nose up with the neck long, we don't want them to do that either. So when we get to that point, that's when we want to send them through a little bit. So we get them a little more active so they don't start to invert at the pole there a little bit. But it's very normal for them to want to stretch all the way down, and is what is required depending on their level of strength. Now right there, I would just send him on a little more actively once you get to that level of stretch like that, and that's really quite good. Because remember, we have to get it first, the horse, to stretch the neck all the way down, the entire length of the neck, to get all the way to the withers, and that's what begins to pull the withers up through the shoulders. If we don't ever get to that full length of stretch, that's never going to happen. Now you will see people who will talk about knowingly about something they know nothing about stretching horses, and oh, you should never stretch past the knees, or you should never do this, or you never do that. The reality is you have to stretch the horse's neck as long as it will go until you stretch the withers, especially on a hollow horse-backed horse. It's so important to pull that withers up through the shoulders and begin to pull that back up, and that's exactly what does it. And interestingly enough, as soon as we do things like put side reins on or something that are tight and that shorten the neck back, that stops happening. We don't get that pull through the shoulders. And of course, what happens then is when horses end up breaking over the third or fourth vertebra and people put on too short of side reins. But this is really good and shows you've gotten off to a really good start with this horse here. And for this type of horse, I wouldn't expect him to walk much more actively than that. That's starting to be pretty nice there. And there you can see how he slows down. It's kind of slow, fast. And, what do? You just ask him to move more actively again. And when he slows down, you ask him again. In time, the horse will learn to maintain that steady pace. But always remember that if you have a sluggish horse, that usually that's because there's something wrong with the horse. And horses really don't want to move. There's always something wrong with them, it seems. We always find some problem somewhere. And the back is in pain. Something's bothering them. The saddle is fitting them. Because once again, it is the nature of a healthy horse to want to move. So if your horse is wanting to do less and less, that should be your first clue that there's something seriously going wrong with what you're doing. Because when horses are actually free to move and comfortable and healthy in that movement, they love doing it, because of course that's what horses do. They're animals of flight. So, a horse that can't take flight, so to speak, is a horse that thinks it's on its way out, so to speak. So it's kind of given up the desire to live. Think about that. So it's so important that we take them out of pain in order to get them to do this. Just like you and I, we're all happy to work out as long as we're having fun, but as soon as it turns to a painful ankle, we're not going to keep doing it. So the same thing is true with horses. Pretty good active stretch right there. Once again, you see how it starts to slow down again. But you do the right thing. You could maybe ask, and don't be afraid of the horse going into the trot the way he's done a couple of times. If he does that, that's perfectly fine. Or even do a couple of those, just a quick little transition and then right back again if it takes that to work him up, to wake him up a little bit. But if a horse isn't over the back, we wouldn't want to continue it. So if you get into the trot and the horse is swinging over the back, we'll just stay in the trot. It's all good. But if you get to the trot and the horse doesn't get over its back, then you want to come back to the walk again. So we don't want to spend a lot of time on a horse doing anything wrong. That's the biggest mistake that I see people making is, A, they don't know what it is to get a horse over the back to begin with, and they fight and fight and fight, and every day the fight gets longer and longer. So I say anyone may have a strong lesson, as Nuno used to say once in a while, with with a horse that's developed a bad habit from someone or something like that. But that fight shouldn't continue. So when you see riders who, every day it's just one fight after another with the horse, or it's a fight through the so-called warm-up. The warm-up is not really a fight. Well, they're not really warming up. They're really just fighting the horse into some level of submission. So here, once again, this is a bit on the too slow side, so you'd want that to be more active, which we're trying to get the trot here. But it's better with a horse that's a little on the lethargic side to just do a short period of active work and then bring them right back. So get what you want. And that's the biggest thing in training, is learning to recognize when you got a little more, when you got a little more respect, to the aids or whatever the case may be, whenever the horse gives you that little bit more. And even if it's only for a moment, it doesn't have to be do the right thing for a half hour. It has to be do the right thing for, 5 seconds. And as soon as you see that gleam of, oh, I understand and I gave you something a little more, that's when you want to quit. So again, I think the hardest thing in training is knowing when to stop. I truly believe that most people today overwork their horses, and that's the biggest part of why they go lame, because of course they don't know how to get them over the back, so they're fighting and fighting and fighting, trying to get the horse to do something, to do all these other things, even understanding learning how to ride on a horse. If it's not over its back, you're never going to learn how to ride. Nothing's going to work the way they tell you it should. Like when you read the book and it says, oh, well, you put your leg on here and this happens. Well, that is never going to happen if the horse is not over its back. The horse is never going to turn correctly because you put your aids in the correct position unless the horse is over its back. So that's the biggest thing in all this, is not wasting yourself or your horses by doing the wrong thing and doing too much of the wrong thing. So there you get a couple of steps. He started to stretch down, and that's okay. When they're just beginning, as soon as you get that stretch down, it's okay to stop right then and there. So that's kind of what you did. So I'm okay with that. Now, as days go by, you'll be able to keep that more consistent and more consistent. Once again, I'd just love to see all these young riders out here learning these methods. This is the hope for the future, folks. And hopefully, unfortunately, all this information got lost over the last 30 years. It's so great to see a new generation, being able to pick up and get this information and move forward with it to the benefit of all the horse sports, I hope. So pretty good work in here. Just keep working for a little more side step over. But look how beautifully this horse is stretching into it like that. Now, once you get that position, just kind of like the lunge line, be sure he's not just going down and smelling the ground, in which case you'd have to give him a little tap with your whip and send him on a little more actively. But you're actually, as you see here, you're getting a better walk much of the time in the work in hand here than you're getting when you're actually working the horse on the lunge line. You're getting a little more activity because you're closer to the horse. So remember that all this work in hand, lunging, is all just riding from the ground. Just so imagine that you're on top of the horse, what you would do. You're trying to teach the horse to be calm and quiet and accept the bridle. Here in the very beginning of work, get calm about the work. You got to remember that the biggest thing in training horses is getting them to trust you. Remember that horses buck people off because that's a response to danger. So if a horse is trying to buck you off, it thinks of you as a predator on its back. And we don't want the horse to think of us as a predator that one day it submits to and gives up the will to live and goes, eat me, We want them to go along and get into the work that we do so they become willing participants. And of course, we want them to be balanced, which is the all-important aspect of getting them over their backs. So really good walk here. This is really starting to swing beautifully, quite active. You could just be swinging, when this horse gets absolutely right, and you have nice long legs, and relative to your horse, and this horse is a good size for you. You just want to encourage just a little bit more. I'd like to see that step become a little bit larger. So you should be almost walking as fast as you can walk when this horse is going correctly. Good there. Now that starts to look really nice and free. And look how the walk becomes active. Now think about it. When you get the horse to that perfect spot, try to imagine a metronome. I'm clicking my fingers right now in the hope that you can hear that. But see how right there, how the horse is like backing off behind that rhythm? So once again, I'm going to wait till you get the horse swinging a little more actively, and then I'm going to set the rhythm again. That's a little better. That's starting to swing a little more there. He starts to get in rhythm, like right there. Now see how that I'm keeping the rhythm that he was in, but see how his legs are going slower and slower. So that's that thing, is to get that rhythm and keep it consistent, but that's also what lets you know when you're doing it correctly or not. Every time you lose the rhythm, you know you're losing the gymnastic quality of the exercise, that it's having no real purpose for the horse. That is, it isn't doing anything for them any longer. They're evading the gymnastic quality. So in other words, it's not building any muscle. Kind of like the guys you see in the gym today, you know, and the reason that gyms stay open, once again, with their millions of customers who never come. You see these guys working out, and they spend more time sitting doing nothing and talking than they actually work out. But a human workout, just like a horse workout, should be continuous, not constantly stopping. And you want to keep moving all the time and keep engaging your core and your entire body. Really good there, and that's starting to be really nice. You're doing a really great job here. You can just see how important this is to the rider, to learn the correct contact. If you learn this before you start trying to ride much, if you don't know it, it's going to have really increased the sensitivity that you have in your hands to the mouth of the horse. It's easy to just get on the back of a horse and start pulling, or to throw away the reins and never take any contact whatsoever. Now that's really good, and I really love how you're keeping that outside rein back along the withers. Really good job. And you think these are difficult techniques, yet here we see, these young people. I'm not actually sure how old this young lady is. But these are not difficult concepts. If you can learn this concept, you can learn any other concept on the back of a horse. Riding is not a difficult thing. People have made it difficult by making horses so difficult to ride and confusing people. Every book in the world that we see says, oh, do this, and this is supposed to happen. But the problem is, it doesn't work that way if the horse isn't over the back. Of course, that's probably why we see so many people who come to me and tell me that their trainers tell them not to read books, that they'll be confused. Well, of course they will, because the book is going to say do this and something is supposed to happen. And, when it doesn't quite work that way, when every turn is just a pull on the inside rein, people begin to find out. So here, once again, just needs to stretch a little deeper. And when you lose the stretch like that, that's that moment that you want to ask for a little more sideward step. You can move the horse back into that outside rein again. That's what it's always about, getting the horse to step into, but yet not step through, but stand up to the outside rein. There, now that's really nice there. And once again, look how much more flexion is in the hock as soon as you get that horse to stretch into that position. And then once you get there, just keep working for that little more stretch, a little more activity. I'm really looking forward to seeing you and this horse develop. Really good, all the way down there. It's so wonderful to see young people, again, learning some respect for the horse. And also learning that this is work. Riding horses and training horses is a lot of work, and it takes a lot of concentration, and that's what it should do for you. It should develop your mind by developing your patience and your willingness to compromise, so to speak, because training is always a compromise, and being able to control our emotions should help us as a human being. And of course, we should learn empathy through it, which should help us in all of our other relationships as well. In a time when the world seems to be coming apart at the seams, because no one can kind of come to everyone seems to be emotionally upset and venting all the time. We all just need to get a little more control over everything and take a step back and take a deep breath. And that's always what we have to do with horses, never allowing yourself to get angry, but looking for real solutions that work for both you and the horse. Think about that. If we can only get our human friends to do the same thing, why can't there be a solution that works for all of us, and there should be able to be. But hopefully, after the chaos that the world seems to be in at the moment, as I say, sometimes the darkest days are before dawn. So, the fact that I see so many people around the world, looking and looking for a more meaning in their riding with horses and getting in touch, tells me that people want something better. They want to get away from the violence and all of that we see so prevalent in every day, including horse training. I mean, that's what should be a reflection, and that's a reflection of our society. The fact that the training of the horses has become such a violent and uncaring thing that is towards these animals, that should be doing so much for themselves. So great job here today. I really look forward to you taking this on to the next step. Just keep working for a little rhythm in all of this, but you're really doing a wonderful job. And I look forward to seeing you again. And I think I might be seeing you somewhere over in Europe. Is that true? I hope so. Now look at what a nice big walk you have there. And once again, the beauty of all this walk work, it's hard to do too much of it. You'll be exhausted before the horse will be. So maybe that's a good way to look at it. And one of the benefits of the work in hand, it also helps you to get in shape, but as well, but it would be very hard, as I said, you're going to wear out before the horse is going to wear out doing this. So it's a very good way for people to begin to have some idea of what the horse goes through. Horses, just because they're big doesn't mean they can just work endlessly. So great job here today. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. It's always wonderful to watch workouts like this. And kudos to another great young rider who's going to hopefully help the next generation. I hope you're helping all your friends around you, wherever you are, all of you. That's the whole point of everything that we do here. Once again, great work. See you next time.